Hi guys, and welcome back to the latest video. Today, as always, we'll be covering the latest and greatest chapter of My Hero Academia, in this case, chapter 294. Starting off in the chapter, we see some of our pro heroes hospitalized and extremely injured, including Mirko, Aizawa, Gran Torino, Hawks, and more. If you know me, you know I love Hawks, so even if I'm just seeing him for a panel, I love that he's back in the story and we still see a little cut of him. It then cuts to an inspiring speech from Best Jeanist recounting his faith in the heroes, and that every strand of hope the heroes gave was wound together in order to bring down Gigantomachia and stop the villain assault. He tells himself he needs to give just a little bit more in order for the heroes to win. It then cuts to Mirio analyzing the strength of the Nomu, and he mentions that these Nomu are the same Nomu that from Kyushu, which is terrifying given that one single Nomu brought Endeavor to his knees back at the end of Season 4. We then see Iida telling Bakugo that he can't take much more given his body's condition, and that he needs to try to hold off, and due to Bakugo's damage, he can't even physically mutter a response. It then cuts to Mr. Compress, one of the key focal points of the chapter, and we see him unable to use his quirk as the restraints on him are far too tight for him to physically touch anything to activate his quirk's ability. He has a monologue recounting Shigaraki gathering the League of Villains and questions what he should do given that they're all trapped. None of their aspirations as the League of Villains have been achieved yet. The thread's then tied on Mr. Compress's neck and he begins being asphyxiated, and he mutters to Spinner that he's really loved being a part of the League of Villains, and that no matter what one has had in their past, the League has never cared and they've embraced them. And they were just a group of fellow deviants all united. In an intense moment, Mr. Compress states that he'll need some volunteers for the next act, and that he needs to fulfill his dream and his calling. Mr. Compress, in a state of insanity, carves out a piece of his own body in order to give his arm room to move, and immediately uses his quirk on Spinner and Shigaraki and puts them in his hand and begins to escape and rescue some of his other fellow villains. We then learn that Mr. Compress's great-great-grandfather is Oiji Harima, and he was once a burglar known as the Peerless Thief who targeted greedy heroes and redistributed their wealth to the people for rectification. We then see in a monologue that his lineage is to shine a light on corruption and that within him is the same goal that Oiji Harima once had. Immediately in the next panels, we see Todoroki screaming Toya's name, and we see Dabi use Flash Fire Fist, Jet Burn, and he intentionally does not kill Todoroki, as Dabi states he can't kill Endeavor's little puppet while Endeavor's passed out. Thank God Todoroki's okay. Dabi, after blasting Todoroki, escapes from Mr. Compress, and we go back to Mr. Compress's internal dialogue, where he promises his great-great-grandfather that the rectification he was unable to fulfill will be left in the hands of Tomura Shigaraki. Who else would we expect? He refers to Shigaraki as the man with the blood of the King of Thieves, and that he will change the world. That is one of the coolest titles that I have ever seen within this show, and very fitting for Shigaraki leading his ragtag group of, well, I guess no longer ragtag, these villains are top tier. Then, it's followed by a badass statement where he confidently questions the audience if we thought he was simply another background character. And he tells us that he's a magician who never reveals his tricks, and he exposes his face for the first time and says this is a once-in-a-lifetime show. I honestly thought he was a little bit of a background character. I really did. The chapter ends off here, and, you know, for some of my takeaways from this chapter really gives a ton of development to a character who's really needed it for a long time. Mr. Compress has kind of been on the back burner in terms of the villains. A lot of the League of Villains have had much more elaboration, given their past, their history, their motivations, and Mr. Compress was much needed to be able to express this. My Hero Academia, it really does a great job of allowing us to feel for the villains and often sometimes slightly root for them. I know when Mr. Compress was having everybody escape and I thought he was going to die, I was really hoping that he would find a way to survive. And you know, it kind of goes against like the whole like heroes versus villains thing, but Horikoshi is just such a master author in terms of he enables such ambiguous villains with understandable goals that I feel like us as an audience can really get on board with. And although I do want the heroes to win and I do want the League of Villains to be defeated, I do understand that these villains have their own motivations, and they're not an ultimate evil at the end of the day. The end of chapter 294, it seems that the escape of the villains is really happening, and I'm really excited to see what happens next. I honestly never thought that the League of Villains would be the ones escaping. I thought very much so, given how busted Shigaraki is and Gigantomachia and all of that, I thought the heroes would be the one escaping, and so I guess my prediction was kind of wrong, but you know, the arc is not done yet, so there's still so much more to see. Now, possibly for the next chapter, the heroes can try to catch him, but just given the brazen confidence of Mr. Compress, it seems that he believes he'll actually be able to get all the League of Villains out. So this very well could be going towards the end of the arc. This arc has been so jam-packed full of action and excitement that I guess it only makes sense that the arc will end with some people escaping, and then like the heroes and the villains have both suffered so many casualties and so much damage, as we saw in the beginning of this chapter, that I'm really not sure how they can even continue fighting. I know there are a few people. The Million has just shown up. I hope he can fight more before this arc is over. Best Jeanist has arrived and everything, and they've definitely saved the heroes. But it seems like this arc is kind of slowing down a little bit to an extent. But there's so much more to come. So I know it's a little bit too early to call that. But guys, I'm so excited to cover My Hero Academia, and I really appreciate all the positive feedback on the chapter reviews I do. I've noticed with these recent chapter reviews, I've gotten a decent amount more views and good feedback and everything. And I really appreciate it. I really enjoy making content about things I'm passionate about, and I'm glad you guys are passionate about anime and My Hero as well. I'm aiming for kind of 2 videos a week now rather than my previous one, just because, I really enjoy making content, and I really appreciate any constructive feedback y'all have. If you enjoyed the video, guys, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, I'll see you next time.